Welcome to another episode of Projects Gone Bad. Now, also don't forget to tune into our weekly radio show, Nostalgic Radio and Cars. I am your show host, Nostalgic Radio and Cars, every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock on WTAN. Check out our website, GulfstreamMotorsports.com. Here's what we're going to do today. I was out scrounging around in the junkyard the other day, and I ran across this really cool old vintage wooden steering wheel. And what's cool about it, it's got a flat spokes, it's a flat dish wheel, so in other words it's not deep dished or anything like that. It's got some surface rust on it, wood's kind of so-so, and the first thing you do once you get the motor off is you grab some steel wool, which I've got little bits and pieces here. I never throw away anything because you always use some stuff, and I kind of want to figure out what this thing is. So the nice thing about steel wool, if you get the 4/0, is if you start rubbing on it, it kind of tends to bring the chrome back to life. It's a lot easier than using cleaner. And if you're watching me right now, you'll actually see this magic actually happen before you. So here's what we have. We have Superior Performance products, and they made a lot of cool stuff back in the day. One of the things they did back in the 60s, and they've been building stuff through the 70s and 80s and probably even the 90s, but this is kind of like very similar to their European style spoke wheel, and it's called the 500. It's very similar to, let's say, like a Lesson or a Motor Lita or a Nardi steering wheel, but it's chrome, which is typical American because most of the European wheels were aluminum. The wood, it's segmented and then it's riveted together. What's really interesting is I was recently looking in the Hemmings magazine, and I'm not sure how far back the issue goes, but it was just in one of the issues I just saw here recently, and there was an article about the guy that actually worked for Superior Performance products back in the day and actually built these very steering wheels. So, and there's a kind of a storyline about how he built these steering wheels, how they were machined, how they were chromed, how the wood was cut and segmented and everything like that. So, but anyway, we're not going to make this a perfect steering wheel. We're just going to kind of just clean it up a little bit, tidy it up, because if you're building like an old school hot rod or rat rod or something that's not perfect and you want a little patina, the rust tells a story. This is the back side, of course. This is the front side with the name. So these are very similar to today's modern day Grant steering wheels. So let me just kind of take a little steel wool, polish up these spokes a little bit, and let's just see how nice we can make this. Now it looks like somebody else might have been working on this. See, it's almost like magic. It's really cool. A restoration shop would charge you a ton of money to do this, but this is something so easy you can do. Just go to Home Depot, buy yourself a bag of steel wool, which, here we go. Whoop, drop that. Grade 4/0, there you go. There's a nice new sheet. We got a spare in case we need it. Anyway, matter of fact, let me see if I can find that one piece. Now this is probably, that could be light odd. Yeah, it is. There's a bigger piece. So if you got a bigger piece, it makes it a lot easier. Now, ordinarily, if I was doing a really detailed wheel, I'd tape this up. But since I'm just gonna rough it up right now, kind of get the basics, I'm gonna just see how it's kind of gonna come out. Now, if I was restoring this wheel, then I would tape all this stuff off. But since we're gonna slightly sand this, scuff this, and then paint it anyway, or spray paint it, or clear coat it rather, you don't really need to do that. So here we go. Like you see, it's not an involved process. It's something you can do relatively easy on your own. If the DIY is the right cliche, do it yourself. Here we go. Look at that. We just took our $10 junkyard steering wheel and just made it, look at the residual there, just made it a pretty nice looking little wheel. Now, if you find a modern day Grant steering wheel adapter, that'll work. You can use that. I don't know, I kind of like the name and everything like that, and the little logo on here, the little guy holding up a steering wheel, the little racer. And what I would do is I would just find the adapter, put the adapter on the back side, and just put some stainless bolts in there, because stainless bolts will never rust, so that problem will never occur. Unfortunately, we can't get it perfect, and there's a little ring around here because when they had the hub assembly and hubcap adapter on it, it kind of scored the chrome. Now I'm going to do the backside. The backside, I know for right now, is not even going to come out. I kind of worked on it a little bit earlier. You can tell that the holes are just a little wallowed out, and you can tell that the finish on the back is not nearly as good as the finish on the front. The chrome on the front is better. You can actually see some sanding marks, and that's actually from the factory. That's like that. Those are little prep marks. So they weren't done perfect to begin with. Now, an option on this steering wheel is, if you don't like the chrome spokes and you want to give it a bit of a brushed finish look, you can go buy yourself some aluminum paint. You can tape it all off, and you can spray paint it. And you spray paint it, will give a kind of a natural aluminum finished look to it. Now see there, this got a lot of surface rust on it. You see that? That's probably not going to come off. Now there are some products out there on the market that will get it pretty good, but you want to be careful that it doesn't ruin the chrome. I'm kind of putting a little bit more elbow grease on this thing, and it's kind of cleaning up. I think it'll be okay for an old school hot rod. So if you're building, let's say, like a 60s car, and you want to go with that period look, you know, and give it that look that, well, you know, like maybe it was a barn find or something like that, then the rust is adequate, because the rust tells a little bit of story. If it's perfect, then what happens is it looks too new, too nice, and nobody's going to buy into your story if you're telling a story. So I got this thing for finding all this old junkyard stuff and just kind of reconditioning it and making it nice. And basically it's acceptable because you can say, well, you know, look at it. I mean, it's obviously not new, and I just didn't buy this stuff because, hey, look, it's got some cosmetic issues. It's got blemishes. It's got patina. I like that word, patina. You know, like furniture that's a little antiqued or relict. That's another word we can look. You know, if you guys are into musical instruments, you know, the new Fenders and the new Gibsons, actually primarily the Fenders, they go, it's got the relic look. So there we go. Now, if I wanted to take this another step further, what I could do, and I might, because if you notice here, I have, believe it or not, I have Duplicolor. We're doing a little spot, shameless plug for Duplicolor. High performance wheel coating. This is kind of a clear coat. This actually works pretty good. And then, of course, I've got your basic Krylon, you know, rattle can, Krylon, satin finish. Alright, I could actually take, and I think I've got a piece here somewhere, some sandpaper. Okay, just lightly scuff it. You ain't going to worry about that right there. Just be careful with it. Just kind of sand around it. And what we're doing is we're not really going to, we're just smoothing it out is what we're doing. Which is pretty much what they would have, all they would have done when the steering wheels were brand new. And just basically going around the steering wheel, just kind of roughing it up a little bit or smoothing it out. Okay. Now, if you notice, it's expanded and contracted probably 1,000,000 times over the last 20, 30 years, 40 years. So it's going to have some gaps in, which is kind of cool. I might just actually just leave it. I kind of like the natural look. I might just do the one side, see how it looks. Okay. See the big gap right there? Here you gotta be a little bit careful. So try not to touch this. You can go back there. If you don't scratch it, we can go over it with the steel wool and bring a little luster to it. The rivets, no big deal. They were kind of just aluminum anyway. Kind of clean up a little bit. Very carefully. Keep your finger on the outside like that so you don't rub up against the chrome. If you notice there's a little bit of gap. And what we're doing is we're just kind of tidying it up a little bit. We're not, let's look at the big gaps right there. Huge separations there. But all in all, because the steering wheel is riveted together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 places, it's still going to hold together. You know, now I wouldn't recommend going crashing against a wall at 40, 50 miles an hour, but I would say for the most part, for buzzing around town, it's fine. Again, if you notice, I'm staying just to the inside of the trim because I'm going to go with that afterwards. See, the other thing too is by doing it this way, you're still kind of retaining a little bit of the look. And since there is no clear on this thing, what's going to happen is it's going to, with all my, well, here particularly in Florida, with my sweat and stuff going all over it, dripping all over it, my body fluids, it will just kind of get aged looking again. I have a thing for wooden steering wheels. I like them. What we'll do later in one of our next series is I'll show you some of the other stuff that I tinker around with. Now, what happens here, of course, the title of this show is Projects Gone Bad. Okay, it's kind of a spin-off of our radio show, which is Nostalgic Radio and Cars. And the reason it's called Nostalgic Radio and Cars is because we play some vintage, classic, cool, groovy 60s, 70s music, rock and roll, psychedelic vibe, and then we talk about cars, and we have a lot of significant guests on. Now, if you look, all I did basically is tidy this wheel up. This wheel is acceptable. Okay, now I'm going to polish the chrome here a little bit, and you see that it's starting to come back a little bit too. We don't want it too perfect, because if it's too perfect, it's, again, like I said, it won't fit the theme of the car. And like, again, if you're building, let's say, like an old school hot rod, and you're using authentic period junkyard parts, you don't want new parts, because if you have a new part with a bunch of old parts, then they won't look right, and then you're going to go in opposite directions. Either A, chasing old parts to make the rest of the car look old, or B, putting new parts on to make the old part look new and give it that shiny look. Actually, I think that looks pretty good like that. You know, we could clear coat it, but now on second thought, I think it looks pretty good. So there you have it, guys, car gals. We got an old vintage steering wheel. It's kind of cool. It's very period correct, superior performance products. The 500. It's kind of an aftermarket wood wheel. I dig the logo. The logo is kind of cool. Les Leston had a logo very similar to that. And let me get a tape measure here real quick. I think this is about 14 inches in diameter. 13 and a half. Okay, well that's appropriate for a sports car, considering I took it off an MG. So that works for me. You know, you got keep in mind, British sports cars are kind of small, so you don't have a lot of clearance there between your knees. Now, if you look up here, over in the corner, there's an old vintage Les Leston, and very similar in concept design, but this is American, and that's European. And strangely enough, that steering wheel was cheaper than this steering wheel, and by today's standards, that is considered a highly prized classic right there, a very sought after steering wheel, Les Leston's. If you look right down here at the bottom, it's etched in there, Les Leston. So, but for an American hot rod, okay, or a British sports car, you know, your basic MGB or your Triumph or a Morgan or something like that, this is an adequate steering wheel. So, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes this quick little DIY, do it yourself, on how to just, within a matter of a few minutes, tidy up a vintage steering wheel. And next week, what we're going to do is we're going to take we're going to show you how to kind of tidy up an old vintage tachometer. Here's one. I'm not sure what the brand is, but it's a 7 grand tach. It's a pretty cool piece, old. Got a little stand that goes on it. Very period correct, 60s. And so tune into our show next week. Projects Gone Bad. It's not just about projects that went bad, like as in project cars, but it's also how we kind of bring some of these old parts back to life. So in the meantime, take care. Hope you guys hit all the junkyards. Don't forget to tune into Nostalgic Radio and Cars every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. for some groovy music and the most legendary and fascinating names in motorsports. Take care, guys.